Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous night between the 19th and the 20th of July of 2026, once again both the Russians and the Ukrainians attacked each other using hundreds of drones. First let's talk about the Ukrainian attack. Yesterday in the evening, pro-Ukrainian sources published a map where we can see the approximate routes of drones that were attacking deep inside of the territory of Russia. According to different sources, the Ukrainians used up to 360 drones to attack the territory of the Russian Federation, and this morning the Minister of Defense of Russia confirmed that during the night the Russians intercepted and destroyed 381 drones of the armed forces of Ukraine. And according to different sources, different reports, the Ukrainians were mainly attacking the city of Moscow, and the Ukrainians most likely were launching their drones and probably missiles from the Kharkiv region, and the Ukrainian drones were moving in the northern direction. And as a result of attack, at least 3 important targets were hit by Ukrainians. So let's talk about this attack. According to information we have, the Ukrainians were attacking different facilities on the territory of the city of Moscow, and these are facilities we're talking about. So 3 targets were destroyed. The Ukrainians attacked an oil base, and the Ukrainians attacked 2 warehouses in this area. So this oil base was damaged and destroyed probably by the armed forces of Ukraine. This warehouse was significantly damaged by the armed forces of Ukraine, and this warehouse was also damaged. But as for the northern warehouse, most likely the Russians managed to repel this attack. Just several drones fell on the territory of this warehouse, dealing some damage. So let's discuss everything in details. Once again, the attack started somewhere at night, and during the night we start receiving the first videos with drones of the armed forces of Ukraine moving in the direction of the capital of the Russian Federation, flying over buildings, over constructions. The Russians reported that they managed to intercept 381 drone bots. Since the beginning of the 20th of July of 2026, we haven't received even a single video on this matter. Probably the drones were destroyed somewhere over the Belgorod region or Oriol region and so on. So on the way towards the city of Moscow. And then we start receiving first videos and first updates about strikes. Once again, according to different sources, the Ukrainians attacked at least 3 facilities, an oil base and 2 warehouses. And for example, in this video, we can see 3 points with black smoke over these territories. That confirms the situation that indeed the Ukrainians attacked 3 targets. So let's discuss the damage that the Ukrainians managed to deal. And first, let's talk about this facility. We have several videos published by different sources. Here we have a black smoke. Here we have a fire broke out right after the Ukrainians attacked the territory. So as you can see, it's not just an attack on some warehouse in the area of the city of Moscow. This is probably the beginning of logistic war. Since the beginning of the fuel war, and since the beginning of April of 2026, or maybe even March of 2026, the Russians have destroyed dozens of warehouses and logistic hubs through the entire territory of Ukraine. But just yesterday, or the day before yesterday, the Ukrainians began retaliation. The Ukrainians began attacking warehouses on the territory of Russia just 2 days ago. And if you remember, 2 days ago, the Ukrainians attacked a warehouse in the eastern parts of the Moscow agglomeration, and this video we have already discussed during the previous updates. So we see that's one of the biggest warehouses was destroyed in the area of the city of Elektrostal. But as of the previous night, we see that the Ukrainians were trying to destroy warehouses in through the southern Moscow agglomeration in the area of the city by the name of Podolsk. So this warehouse, as you can see, was badly damaged, wasn't destroyed as a warehouse that was attacked 2 days ago, but obviously the Russians would be forced to change their plans regarding air defense forces and positions of their air defense forces, because from now on the Russians are needed to defend not just oil refineries, oil bases and so on. Now the Russians need to think how to protect warehouses and logistic hubs through the entire territory of Russia. As for attacks on these warehouses, this is not just an attempt to attack a warehouse that, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians use for military purposes. This is a pressure on the Russian economy, because we understand if a warehouse like this is being destroyed, like this one, this means that probably thousands of businessmen will lose money and will lose goods and products that they store on such a warehouses. So which means that after 2 or 3 warehouses like this are being destroyed, this can lead to a wave of bankruptcies through the territory of Russia, a wave of debts, a wave of complete impossibilities to pay for debts and so on. And this is something like economical pressure from the Ukrainian side before the beginning of elections on the territory of Russia that are going to take place on September of 2026. Today is just the 20th of July of 2026, which means that before the beginning of elections, most likely the Ukrainians would try to attack every single warehouse, at least around big cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, and so on. There are lots of logistic hubs like this through the territory of Russia, but from the other side, there is still a lot of time before elections start. And I would like to remind you that according to pro-Ukrainian sources and according to Ukrainian intelligence, the Russians will announce email mobilization right after the end of elections. Another important thing, the city of Belgorod, another important detail about the fuel and logistics war. According to information we have, for the first time probably since the beginning of 2026, the Ukrainians attacked 2 gas stations on the territory of the city of Belgorod. So in this video we can see the damaged gas station to the southwest of the city of Belgorod, and here we have another gas station damaged through the northern parts of the city of Belgorod. So as you can see, and very likely in coming days, weeks, the Ukrainians would also begin attacking gas stations along the border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. Now let's talk about the Russian attack. This morning, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine reported that the Russians used at least 96 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine between the 19th and the 20th of July of 2026, and the Russians were mainly attacking the southern regions of Ukraine, more precisely the southwestern parts, the city of Odesa and the Odesa port infrastructure. This morning and yesterday in the evening, we received lots of videos on this matter. Here we can see the results of the Russian attack. The Russians continue attacking vessels and tankers offshore the city of Odesa. Lots of vessels were damaged and destroyed by Russians, and lots of videos were published on this matter. In these pictures, we can see another vessel that was attacked and destroyed by Russians during the previous 24 hours. And according to different sources, almost every single 3 or 4 hours, the Russians destroy another vessel or tanker that goes in the direction of the city of Odesa and its port infrastructure. And the Russians continue these attacks, and most likely the Russians are not planning to stop. The Russians are tasked to destroy the logistics of the city of Odesa completely, without any chances for Ukrainians to use the southwestern parts of Odesa for any purposes, neither for military purposes or for commercial purposes. The Russians attack, and the Russians will continue attacking. And furthermore, this morning on the 20th of July of 2026, we received additional updates that the Russians began more waves of attack in this area. Furthermore, the Russians destroyed a gas station on the territory of the city of Mykolaiv. These pictures were published this morning, and here we can see the gas station in the central part of the city of Mykolaiv badly damaged by Russians. So the Russians continue a logistic war with Ukrainians, as well as the fuel war as well. The sources reported that the Russians also once again attacked the logistic hub in the northeastern parts of the city of Zaporizhzhia. We have just a report without pictures and without proofs. Now let's discuss the situation in Kyiv. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians continue their protests against Syrskyi. As of the previous evening, as of the evening of the 19th of July of 2026, according to different sources, there were less people in comparison with previous days. So which means that for some reason, we start receiving less reports about this, or less people continue protests. Let's wait and see what is going to happen next. But today, the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, stated that he's going to have meetings with different military officers. Most likely they will talk about the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Anti-Syrskyi, and they will plan what to do next, either to dismiss him or to make some compromises between Syrskyi and the former Minister of Defense Fedorov. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, lots of very interesting changes were recorded. And first, let's talk about the Kharkiv direction. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation and the Group of Forces North today reported that the Russians during the previous days managed to improve their positions significantly. The Group of Forces North reported that currently the clashes are taking place through the villages of Yurchenkova, Bilyi Kolodiaz, Volokhovskaya and Zakharovka. Furthermore, the Russians added and emphasized that currently the Russians are attacking in the direction of the village of Shevchenkova and that the clashes are taking place on the outskirts of this village. And furthermore, the Russians managed to approach the settlement of Bakshevka, which is located to the east of the city of Bilyi Kolodiaz, and that the clashes are taking place to the north of the settlement. So as you can see, according to these changes, we see that the Russians continue encircling the settlement of Bilyi Kolodiaz from the west and from the east, and that the village, the settlement of Bilyi Kolodiaz, was caught by Russians in pincers, which means that in coming days the decisive phase of the battle for the settlement begins, and the Russians are tasked to force the Ukrainians to fall back. And if Ukrainians lose control over the city of Bilyi Kolodiaz, this is going to be something like a breakthrough, because lots of territories, the defenses of lots of territories would collapse automatically, and the Ukrainians, after the end of the battle for the village of Bilyi Kolodiaz, would be forced to fall back from the most northeastern parts of Kharkiv region towards more reliable positions in the area of the village of Veliki Burluk. So the battle for the northeastern parts of Kharkiv region enters its decisive phase. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Sloviansk direction. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes were recorded to the east of the cities of Sloviansk and Mykolaivka, and these days we have lots of changes. Almost every second day we adjust the map in the Russian favor or in the favor of a contested area or infiltration zone. The Russians continue advancing. The Russians approach the Mykolaivka Citadel from every single direction. The Russians approach the citadel from the south, from the southeast, from the east, and from the northeast. The Russians most likely in coming days will begin the battle for this citadel, and if Ukrainians lose control over the citadel, this is going to be the beginning of the battle for the entire Sloviansk-Druzhkovka agglomeration. The situation is very difficult. The Russians are in a hurry because they know that before the beginning of parliament elections they need to provide the victory, so with the purpose to make the selection process much smoother in comparison with the current situation. Now let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction. We have lots of changes as well. Another day in a row, or third or fourth day in a row, we continue adjusting the map in the Russian favor. During the previous 12 hours, according to different sources, the Russians once again improved their positions to the east of the city of Stepnohorsk, and this information was provided by very reliable pro-Russian sources. And these are the changes between two dates. This is the end of the 18th, this is the end of the 19th, and this is the beginning of the 20th of July of 2026. As you can see, the Russians these days launched a very powerful counteroffensive operation, and as a result of this counteroffensive operation, the Russians managed to partially restore control over the territories they lost during the Ukrainian counteroffensive operation of February-May of 2026. And as you can see, the Russians continue advancing, and it seems that right now the Ukrainians are not able to stop the Russians. Furthermore, we continue receiving reports about the situation in Dobropolye. We expect in coming days additional updates from this area, because the Russians reported that they're about to finish the battle for the villages of Shevchenko and Svitla, which means that in coming days the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation may confirm control over these territories from the Russian side. And of course, and due to the Ukraine's attack in the direction of the city of Moscow that took place between the 19th and the 20th of July of 2026, 2026. We expect that during the upcoming night between the 20th and the 21st of July of 2026, the Russians will attack the city of Kyiv once again. And I would like to point your attention that as for the central and the eastern parts of Ukraine, since the beginning of this year, the Russians have already destroyed dozens of warehouses and logistic hubs, but the Russians yet haven't attacked even a single logistic hub through the western parts of Ukraine, which means that everything is ahead of us. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.